Thank you for inviting me to speak about DCC's Ivalua journey. A little bit about me to start off with. I'm Stuart Moore, Senior Commercial Manager within a team called Commercial Operations and Planning. Basically, we support the commercial function, contract management, procurement, strategic supplier management with process, technology, and other things just to keep all the wheels running smoothly. I've been at DCC for about 4.5 years. Prior to that, I had a variety of various commercial roles in procurement, contract management, and prior to that I was an IT consultant putting in software systems. So this is kind of quite familiar ground in many ways. If I move on, let's try and go the right way. So I'm going to talk a little bit about DCC, who we are, what we do. There'll be a short video just explaining a little bit about the company, why we picked Ivalua, and that's partly about why Ivalua in particular, but partly why we wanted to choose a system to do our automation within our commercial function. I'll talk a little bit about what we did. We went live in February this year. Talk a little bit about what went live, what we're doing now, the next phases of our implementation, and then the lessons we learned, which there are many, and then a little bit about what we're doing after that. So I'm going to show a short video.
Have you ever stopped to think what happens when you switch on the lights? They just work, right? Well, there's actually a lot more going on than you might think.
Behind every switch we flick or dial we turn is a nationwide system that adapts flexibly to changes in supply and demand. Smart meters in homes are key to this, giving a detailed picture of our consumption to us and to our energy provider. The network that connects smart meters to energy suppliers is operated by the Data Communications Company, the DCC. The DCC network's the digital backbone of our energy system. It can reach more than 99% of properties, making it Britain's largest data network. It's already transformed meter readings, billing accuracy and top-ups, and it's helping Britain save more than 500,000 tonnes of carbon emissions a year.
The network operates to the highest security standards in Europe. It's endorsed by the National Cyber Security Centre, part of GCHQ, and operates entirely separately from the potential pitfalls of the public internet. So how does it work?
Every time energy is used or generated in homes with smart meters, they turn it into a packet of data. The data's securely wrapped using 2 layers of encryption. A communications hub creates a home area network to receive the data from the smart meters. The hub transmits the data to an in-home display, which shows how much energy is being used or sold back to the grid. The data is then transmitted from the home to a wide area network of mobile phone or radio masts, and from these to the DCC's servers. The DCC never sees or keeps the data. It transports it securely straight to energy suppliers to access. They decrypt it so they can bill consumers accurately. The detailed consumption data also helps the whole system make the best use of energy, keeping the lights on and supporting Britain's net zero goals. This single network for everyone also makes it easier to switch supplier. The network is monitored 24/7 by the DCC in its Security and Technical Operations Centre, where the team continuously check its resilience, speed and security. So why is this important? Well, to make our homes more efficient, we'll need more devices like solar panels, heat pumps and home energy storage. But to work really well, these devices depend on the data transmitted over the DCC network.
For example, I want to charge my electric car using my solar panels if I can, but once it gets dark, I'll need power from the grid.
Informed by the data, the grid can act smart. So my car's charged at a time when the electricity is cheapest and renewable energy is used as far as possible.
And whether I'm charging at home or at work, I want a fair, transparent deal for my energy and the ability to switch supplier with ease.
So the future's here already, with an intelligent, integrated digital energy system. At its heart, smart meters and the secure DCC network that supports them, making Britain more connected so we can all lead smarter, greener lives.
So hopefully that gives you an idea of what DCC does. A little bit about the company itself. We're owned by Capita. We're a relatively small organisation. We've grown from around a dozen people, say 15 years ago, to about 750 today. So we've grown relatively quickly, which means our processes are not that mature in a lot of ways, and we have no pre-existing commercial systems. So this is leading on to why we selected Ivalua. Because we're owned by Capita, we have some restrictions on what we can do. We leverage some of their infrastructure, like SAP in particular. So in terms of why we went down this route, so we ran a procurement about 2 years ago, and Ivalua was selected as best in breed. A lot of the decisions that were made 2 years ago were great at the time, but the world, and particularly DCC, has moved on. We've had a lot of change in senior personnel, change in approach, change in process. So all of these benefits are still what we're aiming to do, and we want, and we are getting Ivalua to deliver, but the actual way we're going about it has changed very slightly. So we, as an organisation, we are heavily regulated, even though we're not public sector. We have Ofgem and the Department of Energy, Net Zero, scrutinising what we do. They don't always agree on what they want us to do, so we are stuck in the middle to some extent. But what they do insist on is good governance, transparency and accuracy, particularly with spend, because if we go against what they recommend, we can have our spend disallowed. Almost everything we do is outsourced to a number of organisations which you would have seen from the video. We need to rationalise our processes. We have a lot of spreadsheets, we have a lot of disparate small systems, and Ivalua will join all of these together, or at least most of them. I'll come on to that in a second. We need to move faster, we need to be more transparent, and actually it will save us money in the long run. We are evolving our category management strategy, which we don't have fully in place at the moment. We hope to make around a 3% saving, which is an industry benchmark, through having more spend management, but as you'll see, it's a journey, and we are quite at the beginning of that journey. So what have we done so far? I think it's fair to say that we had to implement on a schedule that we didn't choose. Our Chief Commercial Officer wanted the product to go in February, so we did, and we had to concentrate on core functionality to make that happen. I wouldn't say we cut corners, but we had to just concentrate on getting the system in, and it did mean we have to pick up some other things later. So we have the ability to run sourcing of all value, anything end-to-end sourcing capability, which is great. We're not fully using that for every procurement right now, but we have the ability to do that. We're storing core documentation, so the RFP documents, the scoring documents, the contracts as well. Suppliers can register, they can respond to communication, and they can interact with us on sourcing events, which is great. Within contract management, we store the contracts and the change control notes, but we don't store contract change at the moment. We've integrated Adobe Sign, and as Karen will tell you, that's been fun. Adobe being one of the more entertaining companies to deal with. It does work. We've had a few issues, which again I'll come on to in a second, but we can use Adobe Sign in our workflows. We're holding contract metadata to be able to report on contracts, and I think the other thing to say is the contracts we have in Ivalua are only the key contracts. So the contracts that are managed within our commercial function are the ones where the majority of spend, I think it's something like 97% of our spend, is with a few contracts. I think it's of the order of about 150 contracts. The rest of them are not in Ivalua at the moment. The commercial operations and planning team, where I work, we've had to stand up a function to support Ivalua. Kerry in the audience will be able to tell you all about that. So that means things like joiners, movers, leavers, license allocation, license management, providing support, we have a support framework whereby we have some SMEs within each area, and they are the first port of call because they're the functional experts, and where they can't answer a question, they'll go to Kerry. Kerry will try and diagnose the problem, and then Kerry will interact with TSM, and then if TSM can't fix it, we go to Ivalua, but hopefully there aren't too many of those. We have some basic dashboards and out-of-the-box reporting, but that's just vanilla reporting right now. And strategic supplier management, that's a new function for DCC. We used to have a supplier relationship management team, which has now moved into our operations function. The strategic supplier management team, I think, as some people might have seen at the event yesterday, is dealing with the key accounts and developing them to add more value to each of those relationships. So what are we doing now? So the main thing, I think, is to divide into 3 sections. So we're dealing with the corners we had to cut, if you like, to put phase 1 in. There was some functionality which we decided not to implement, mainly due to time. And then there's new functionality we want to put in going forward. So we want to add in all the suppliers in the organisation, and that's around 700 suppliers. And some of those contracts were quite difficult to find. We have a third party helping us identify all those contracts and loading them in through an ETL into Ivalua. Some of the phase 1 issues around Adobe Sign, it's all working, but administering the various groups that users have to be added to Adobe Sign to make that work. We're looking to make that much more role-based. Role-based access control is something that our SEC license requires us to do. It's a manual process right now. We're looking into ways of possibly automating that in the future. And managing our licenses. Not the roles that Ivalua has in terms of sourcing and contract management don't perfectly align to the permissions we need to do our jobs. So there's been a lot of work we've had to do to make that work. And again, that needs to be streamlined and rationalized. Some of the work we had originally intended to put into phase 1, we're all still working on. So within DCC, the lower risk and lower value procurement, so if it's under 100K and it's perceived as low risk, it's actually run in the business, not in our commercial function. That means anyone in the organisation, up to 750 people, can execute a procurement. As you can imagine, that doesn't always go smoothly, and we don't have full visibility or control. So we're looking at putting all of that procurement through Ivalua, and I'll come on to some of the lessons we can learn about moving that forward. It says weighing and scoring there. I'm not sure what weighing and scoring is. It's weighting and scoring. So that's my fault. So when we did the phase 1 pre-work to go live, the procurement SMEs weren't happy with the way that Ivalua presented the data. It can do weighting and scoring without any issue, but we have responsibilities to present that in a certain way, and also to report on it from a license control perspective to make sure that the suppliers are informed in a prescribed way about the outcome. I think the latest thinking is we can actually probably go with more of the vanilla implementation, but that's one of the challenges. We've had quite a big turnover of SMEs, and I'll speak about some of the challenges that's come up with later. I mentioned that we use Capita's SAP system. We have one of the reasons we didn't go down the source to pay route is because we're utilising Capita, and if you've watched the press, DCC's license is up for renewal, so we don't know what the future holds. Maybe we'll be with Capita longer term, maybe we won't. So we're having to do some workarounds to interface with SAP. We have a system whereby a manual process updates supplier information in SAP, and we're working on integrating that with Ivalua via a platform called OneData that we use to enter the data once in Ivalua and it flows through to SAP. We didn't have time to implement that properly, so that hasn't been done either. Taxonomy is a really interesting one. Within DCC, we have a number of different taxonomies. So SAP has material codes and material group codes. In Ivalua, there's a different set of codes, and we have a procurement initiation form, which has a third set of codes. When you have manual processes and you're not reporting on spend management, that doesn't matter as much. But when you want an integrated system and you want to get the full value of your spend management, that's really important. So we're adopting the UN SPSC code set, which is United Nations Standard Products and Services Code. Something like 50,000 codes. We're not going to be using all 50,000 because it has everything from cloud services to livestock, pigs, alpacas, everything. It goes down to the nth degree. So we'll be putting in a subset of those codes to manage our spend going forward. And then the functionality is really, once we've got all of our data in Ivalua and all of our full source to requisition workflow in there, then we can really start leveraging the value of our data and all of our contracts. So the requisitions element we were going to put in phase one, and I think the process just wasn't mature enough. And it's since we've had a number of workshops since which TSM have supported us in, and it's been really valuable to completely streamline that process and have something that's more fit for purpose. There's a lot of errors in our purchase order process at the moment, and to reduce those errors and make it work better, we've had to put in a lot of work to get the process right and then automate it after that. So what have we learned? Quite a lot, actually. So roles, we don't have a one-to-one role mapping between the licenses and Ivalua and our own DCC roles. Sometimes that's caused us to reflect, and maybe we're doing things the wrong way. Ivalua is an industry standard system, lots of companies use it, and where things are not necessarily the way we work, we're questioning what we do. And can we work in a slightly different way, which makes a better outcome for the system and actually saves us money on licensing as well. We've had to create some new business roles. We've had, I think, standing up a project manager to manage the Ivalua implementation is essential. We've had 3 different project managers over our time with Ivalua, which has been difficult. They've all got a slightly different approach. The person we've got in place now is, I think Karen hopefully will back me up, is very rigorous and holds people to account. And I think had we had her right at the beginning, we'd have had a lot smoother journey. As I mentioned before, we've got a systems admin function within our commercial operations team, managing joiners, movers, leavers, licenses, support, training, documentation, lots of work which we didn't anticipate having to do to the degree that we're doing it. I think this is possibly the most important thing on here, protecting SME time. People are implementing Ivalua within DCC as a desk side activity. Everyone's really busy. Everyone wants Ivalua to go in, but there's so many demands on people's time, and the people that you want on your project are the ones who are the most experienced and the most skilled, and they're the ones most in demand. So protecting their time is absolutely probably the most important thing here. Training, support and documentation has taken a lot of time. We had a dedicated training material person, and business changed. They've now rolled off onto something else, so we've had to manage that within the team. In terms of process, I think it's probably fair to say that Ivalua can be oversold. So it's very, very good at what it does. We found for our company there are some things that it's not the best solution for. So contract change, we're looking at a different system, and then we would load the contracts into Ivalua. Same with obligation extraction, we're looking at different ways of doing that, and then we would load the output into Ivalua. So Ivalua will still be the system of record, but we will look at other systems to supplement the functionality. Variety of process. I think when we talk about putting in all procurements into Ivalua, we have a different way of managing those procurements. So the sub 100K, even though we can run all procurements on Ivalua today, the change at DCC is more around people and process. So we could give everyone in DCC a procurement license or a sourcing license in Ivalua, and that might make Ivalua very happy, but I don't think our P&L would suffer. We're talking about millions of pounds. So we're looking at ways of doing that, and the current thinking is to have that within the procurement function, managed by a core team of people, because that way you reduce the training and the license cost and the overheads. During 2023, we undertook a commercial transformation function in conjunction with a consultancy firm while we were trying to put Ivalua in. That's not a clever thing to do. It's just the way things worked out. So we had processes being rewritten at the same time we were trying to put a system in. So in a way, having an MVP in February has worked in our favour, because now we can have a bit of a reset rather than trying to build the plane while it's still flying. Talked about changing ourselves rather than Ivalua. I think it's putting Ivalua in has caused us to look at our own maturity and accelerated it in lots of ways. Our existing source to pay process was pretty immature. We had a very high error rate, and I think to get the benefits of Ivalua, we have to streamline the process and make that work first, because automating something that's bad is not really going to help. And the last point on there is to do with information security. We have a couple of environments. We have a live environment which is protected by SSO, single sign-on. We have a pre-prod environment, and the pre-prod environment has production data in it. So we had an initial problem whereby the protection on the pre-prod environment wasn't to the same standard that the live environment is, so we shut it down immediately. In order to fix that problem, we had to do one of two things. Either you anonymize the data, which is time consuming and difficult, or you put similar protections on your pre-prod environment, which we've since done, and now we can start testing some of the changes. What's next? I think really it's about leveraging the value of what we've got in the system. So imagine a state, hopefully in not too many weeks' time, where we've got all of our contracts in Ivalua, we're running all of our sub 100k procurements, all of the data is visible, all of our taxonomy aligns, so SAP, Ivalua, our procurement initiation forms, it's all the same. We can then use category management properly, we can see what we're spending on what, we can see where there's duplication, where we can rationalize suppliers. We can report to our regulator much more easily by pressing a button. We can develop new reporting. We're looking at spend analytics. We haven't really gone down that path too closely yet. But again, having the data in there as a foundation and supporting our strategic supply management team with supplier surveys, getting suppliers to self-certify, upload their insurance compliance certificates, etc., etc. And AI, because we're heavily regulated, AI is a difficult thing for DCC to implement. We know Ivalua has a great functionality within the AI space. We just need to do it in a controlled way so that we don't breach any of our license regulations. That was a very quick run through. I think I've probably done it too quickly. Thank you.